Yes. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. This platform is for common sense people looking for up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information without the hot garbage corporate media bias. The power of one can lead to the power of many. You never know what small act that you may say or do that may literally change the lives of millions tomorrow. And don't you ever think that you can't make a difference, because you can. Good morning, my fellow Michiganders. Good morning, my fellow Americans. Welcome to the Grassroots Army Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Garrett Soldano. And man, oh man, do I have a great person to bring on the show here today. She made a tweet over on X about the Michigan GOP and the chair and what we are looking for in those kind of qualifications. So I wanted to bring her on, and she gave up deer hunting, folks, this morning to come on and educate us and teach us about what we're looking for at the Michigan GOP chair. So welcome to the show, Miss Megan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
So I have to give you a shout out now because you've been posting some epic pictures of some deer hunts. So you got to explain to the audience what you got and what your daughter got.
So my daughter, for the first time ever, went out in the youth hunt and snagged a pretty nice 8-point. And then mom had to show her how it's really done. And on opening day at about 10 o'clock, I was able to get a nice 10-point. And then we've taken 2 does since then. So looking to go out a little bit more. Our goal as a family is to not buy any meat from a grocery store in 2025.
That is fantastic. As a chiropractor, and I'm a big fan of the Make America Healthy Again, I think that is absolutely fantastic. So obviously your freezer is getting quite full. That is for sure. And congratulations to your daughter.
Thank you. She's, I'm a big hunter. My husband doesn't hunt at all. So people walk in the house and they see all the mounts, the turkey mounts, the deer mounts, and they're like, Mark, those are great. And he's like, those are my wife's and my daughter's. But she loves it. She's completely obsessed with it, which is great. I mean, it's not a TV, it's not a tablet. So I feel really lucky that she's gotten into it as much as she has.
Amen. The apple obviously doesn't fall far from the tree. Your husband, Mark, he's a law enforcement officer.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep. He's a police
officer.
officer.
I remember that. Very good. Well, tell him, obviously, thank him for his service. That is for sure.
I will. Thank you.
That's one thing that's going on, which you are well aware of with all the Venezuelan gangs and stuff. I'd like to bring that up too. Matt Maddock posted something with some tags that they're spray painting everywhere in our communities. And, it's interesting that Governor Whitmer just continues to stay silent on that. She continues to be on her grandstanding with abortion rights for some reason. So interesting concept. But let's get into what you tweeted. Like what you have a very impressive thread, and I would like to go through the entire thread. I have it all printed out here. But you really gave kind of your perspective and your experience on what we are looking for as a leader of the Michigan Republican Party, especially since Pete Hoekstra has moved on to be an ambassador of Canada. So can we just go through some of the things that you think are good qualifications?
Absolutely. I would love to.
Okay, good. So the first thing is, like, obviously I laugh because I ran with Matt DePerno last time. People think when you're running for chair, it's going to be fun, it's going to be exciting, and it's not the case. It's knockdown, drag out, fist fight in a phone booth at convention. And it's definitely, I mean, you wrote about it. It's not a part-time gig. I mean, you literally have to live and breathe this thing.
Yeah, it's a lot of my perspective comes from being a county chair for 4 years, being on district committee, being on state committee, and really kind of shaping what does a political party do? And, as a county party chair that raised a lot of money and spent a lot of time on elections, I took heat from people that would constantly say things like, we need to spend money on a social gathering. And I'm like, that's not our job. Like, that's what the knitting club is for. No offense. It really comes from the viewpoint that I believe state, district, and county parties have one goal, and that is to win elections. And so everything that I look at from the political party apparatus comes from that viewpoint that I believe they are there solely to win elections for Republicans, the Republican nominees. And that's what exists.
No, I mean, you're spot on. And I love how you put in there that anyone that's trying to build their name or ambition should step aside, because it is a thankless job. I mean, you're in there for the service of people, for the ultimate people, all the constituents here in the state of Michigan, and you are there to represent the Michigan Republican Party, which is a lot of people in the state of Michigan. So it's really just that you're serving, and service has to be at the forefront. You're not going to get rich in this position. You're not going to create a name. Now, if you are very successful, I think you can put that on your resume, obviously, because to me, as you are well aware of, because you ran a county party, is you have to have organizational skills. You have to basically be the CEO, and that's management. And if you don't have that experience, it's not that you can't earn that experience and someday maybe run for a position like that. But man, you have to bring what I say, like a skill set to the equation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you have to bring an awareness of where you're not strong, right? Maybe it's fundraising. Maybe it's you don't have the skills and knowledge to know exactly how to run a campaign. So you have to surround yourself with the people that do know how to do those specific items. And that's kind of really what I delved into my thread. It's not, I mean, there's fun parts of the job, sure. But if you're running because you think it's fun or you think it's a part-time gig that you just get to walk in a building and kind of high five people, that couldn't be further from the truth. Anybody who has served in a county party capacity as a chair or a district chair, even of a little county, can tell you how much work it takes. Talk to somebody like Vance or Rocky out of Oakland, or, talk to the Kent County chairs. The bigger counties, it almost, that in and of itself is a full-time job. I mean, for 4 years as the LCRP chair, my son was 5 when I retired being chair. I missed basically 4 out of the first 5 years of his life. There's not a single county party event as chair they did that I missed. I was at every single thing. And you're the driver, right? You're the driver. You create the direction, you create the momentum, you create the hype. And if you're not doing it, if people don't see you giving your all, why are they going to give their hard-earned time, talents, and treasures to contribute as well? So I really believe that the person who's in that leadership capacity has to understand, especially for state party chair, it is a full-time job. It's not something you can do as a side gig.
And just to let the audience know, Meghan, when she was chair of the Livingston County Republican Party, she held a debate in the gubernatorial race, and it was our first debate. Even Chief James Craig was supposed to be there, but he didn't show up.
I know.
But it was a very successful debate. I mean, you could really see how much work, because people don't understand how much work goes into planning not only those types of events, but events periods. Even a gosh darn Christmas party,
Correct.
It's a huge undertaking. And so if you have those organizational skills and you know how to do those things, and that's a piece of the pie. I also want to get into Pete Hoekstra taking over a very divided party. And when Christina Caramo got voted out and everything else, he was messing with some grizzly bears. And I think Pete did a wonderful job. I mean, it was a direct reflection of how we did in the state of Michigan. Unfortunately, we came up a little short with the Senate race, but we won up and down the ticket.
Yeah. I mean, you're spot on. He took over. He had to move mountains. The analogy that I used in my thread is, let's remember when the dog caught the car. And that's kind of how I phrase it, right? And it didn't just happen on the state level. It happened in different counties across our state. You saw a lot of leadership on the local level change over the last 2 years, between 23 moving into 24. And so there was a lot of that where people had to come in. I think Pete had significantly more work than others. People don't understand, it's not just raising money, and this is something I didn't touch on the thread. It's also the legal technical things, campaign finance compliance, knowing how and where you can move money, knowing what kind of different accounts you can have between, how much money can you raise into what FEC accounts, what are political super PACs on the federal level, what are state super PACs, what kind of contributions can they receive, how can you move money in between, where money can be spent on what candidates, what are the limits. And if you step in it in the campaign finance world, it becomes really expensive really quick on the state or federal level with fines and having compliance issues. And so I think Pete had yeoman's work behind the scenes on a lot of things that we don't see cleaning up when he took over. And I thought he did a really good job of I don't think anybody expected the state party to be what it was 6, 8, 10 years ago. But I think Pete did yeoman's work, and that was shown in the election results, right? With President Trump winning Michigan, I think shows how well they did.
Yeah, I mean, he stopped the bleeding. There's no doubt about it. And I love, this is one of my favorite parts of your thread, is some people think that the chair's responsibility is to be an activist, is to, go on their soapbox and scream from the rooftops on policy and everything else. And that is further from the truth, correct?
Yeah, I think I made a post later in the day that said something like, too many people misunderstand what the state party is there for. They think it's kind of their moral compass. They think it's there to advocate for policy. They think it's there as like a spiritual leader. The state party is not the church. They're not your pastor. They're not Michigan Right to Life, Great Lakes Gun Rights, GLEP. Those are advocacy groups. 2A, Rob does a great job in the 2A advocacy area. Those groups advocate for policy. The Michigan Republican Party is there to win elections. It is a partisan political machine, period, and stop. If you're looking to them for more, now I'm obviously as a conservative have a moral compass and support candidates that align with my values, as do most of us, and we have a party platform. But the entity of the party itself is a partisan political machine that is meant to raise and spend money to get Republicans and affiliated Republicans on the nonpartisan ballot elected to office. That's what it's there for.
Well spoken. I mean, you put the three right there: to raise money, to build winning infrastructure, and unite coalitions. And that's one thing that Michigan has, is a lot of coalitions. It's like herding cats.
I mean, I saw yesterday, and there were some people that commented, and they're like, Michigan is a communist state. And listen, if I thought Michigan was a communist state, I'd be the first one that would be packing my bags up and toting my kids to Indiana or somewhere else where I felt like we were free. I don't believe Michigan is a communist state. I do believe that we are a swing state that has a lot of everyday families that care about everyday issues that impact us. A lot of working everyday Michiganders in the trades, in the unions. And I think that the America First agenda has specifically touched on issues that impact them, which has really shown Republicans in our state the message and the issues that we have to care about moving forward to really continue to build on those coalitions that already existed. And then I think in 24, President Trump showed us there's even more area for us to expand. I mean, look at what happened down in areas of Oakland and Macomb counties, where we won places that traditionally Republicans would have never even thought about winning. And we have to continue to grow those if we want to win non-presidential elections like what's coming up in 26.
Yeah, I mean, for the state of Michigan in 2026, it's go time. I mean, it truly is. I mean, we finally have dug our heels in the sand with the legislature, but it's really time to get those three positions: the Attorney General, Secretary of State, and obviously the governor's seat back in the right hands. And I want to go over, obviously, what a lot of grassroots folks out there do not like to talk about is money. All right. And you had some statistics in your thread, which I didn't even know that they were this high. But in 2024, more than $150 million was spent in the Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat, over $75 million in congressional races, $32 million on the fight for the control of the House. My goodness gracious, that's a lot of money. That's just the Republican side, right?
No, that's total between both sides.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's probably even going to be higher as more. I mean, we haven't even had post-election reports filed yet. And so it's probably even going to end up being higher than that.
Do you know offhand what the Democrats spent on the Senate race, to give a comparison?
Mean, Democrats spending up and down the ballot in Michigan outweighed Republicans on an almost 10-1 margin.
I mean, people need to understand that.
Yes.
I mean, that is because and the reason we fundraise, people like hate talking about fundraising, and I don't like doing it either, but it's a necessary evil, because if you can't get your narrative out on, it's not most corporate media, but even social media, because what they do during political election times is they will bog you down. They're saying, if you want space, you got to pay for it. And I really feel that the political landscape is evolving into more social media buys than corporate media buys, because more and more people are on social media, especially the younger generation. But you can't, I don't care how good of a candidate you are, If you can't fundraise, I don't care how great you think the Constitution is, how great your policy is, if you can't get out there and get your messaging out to the masses, you don't have a snowball chance in Hades and winning. And Gary Glenn told me that when I was running in the beginning. I love the guy. He came to one of our rallies, and with our rallies, we could draw a lot of people. That's one thing I've been able to do is our crowds were bigger than everyone combined. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of people came to our rallies, and he came to one. And he loved listening to me speak, and he got all fired up, and he came up to me. He says, Gary, how many people are in here? I was looking around. I was like, well, it's about 600-700, Gary. He's like, yeah, this is very impressive. I said, how many events can you do like per week that you usually do? And I was like, well, I do about 3 or 4. I said, they're not always this packed. Sometimes it's just 75 and 100. And he did the math. And what we calculated was no matter how great of a speaker I was and how great of a motivator I was, all of my events combined was only around 75,000 people. It's not enough. So the state of Michigan, to win in a gubernatorial campaign, you need to be over what, 2.2 million?
Yeah.
The only way you get there is those gosh darn media buys. And I'm proud to say with our run for governor, with the grassroots army that was behind me, we were very effective in fundraising. We out fundraised every other single candidate combined. People don't understand that. We raised over $2.2 million and we still came up short. Obviously, the Trump endorsement holds a lot of weight. So if you get the Trump endorsement, it helps you tremendously in the primary. Don't get me wrong. In the general, it can kind of help or hurt you depending on what state you're in, but you need to have the ability to fundraise. So my point is, as the chair of the Michigan Republican Party, how important is it, Megan, to be able to fundraise?
I mean, you're absolutely spot on. I have had more and more people lately, even on the Republican side, say things like, well, we should regulate campaign spending. And I'm like, what does that look like to you? What does that mean? And they said, well, maybe we should just put a cap on what you can spend. And I'm like, okay, we're free market people, right? We're capitalist. So I use the analogy that running a campaign is you're marketing and branding, but instead of marketing your Yeti cup, you're marketing Garrett or Meghan or Donald J. Trump. That's all you're doing is marketing. And businesses have discovered that politics is a lot like getting married and having a baby. It's going to happen. And when it happens, people will pay more in order to participate in said activity. So people don't realize that when you go to run political ads on the radio or on the TV, there's rate cards. And if you're Tide Pod soaps going to run an ad, you pay the everyday price that a commercial person is going to pay to run an ad on TV. But if you are a political candidate, your rate card is different and it's higher. It's more expensive for you to run an ad. If you're an issue advocacy group, it's more expensive than Tide, but it's cheaper than Garrett running an ad. So that also goes back into making sure the chair knows where they're raising money and how they're going to spend it, because there's different rates depending on what you're talking about. But money in politics is going to be a thing, and it's only getting more and more expensive. If you calculate on the national level, there was over $1 billion spent on the election this cycle. Let me repeat that. More than $1 billion was spent. I mean, I think if you add in the presidential race, the contested U.S. state Senate races across the country, you're cresting nearly $2 billion in spending on politics. This is all money being donated, and we can have a conversation about foreign money coming in, because we all know that, federal super PACs have issues. But set that aside. The conventional thought that, thoughts and prayers are going to win us an election is simply not true. You have to have money. It takes money to win elections, like it or not. It's just a fact. Mail costs money. Postage, even to mail a letter now is like 75 cents. So your bulk rate, 3, 4, 5 years ago isn't the same as it is today. Text messaging costs money, emails, robocalls, everything you do in politics costs money. To get your message out there. And if people don't know who you are, the other thing that I always commonly remind people is, if you're watching this podcast, I hate to break it to you, but you are not normal. You are significantly more educated than almost everyone else in the realm of politics. Your knowledge and your awareness of who people are, where they stand on issues, who's running for what is orders of magnitude compared to normal everyday Americans who literally tune in for like weeks right before they have to check a box, and then they tune out because they have bills to pay, families to raise, jobs, kids to run a million miles an hour, mom and dad to take care of, you name it, that's what they're focused on. And so you have to have the money in the time window when a majority of the voters are paying attention right before the election to tell them who you are and why you're running and why to vote for them. They're not as educated as we all are. And that takes a lot of money to do today.
You're spot on. Like, I just look at my neighborhood. There's probably, I don't know, a couple hundred people, and I can count on one hand. There we go. How many people are actually involved in politics in some way? And involved, I mean, they listen to podcasts like this, or are listening to, social media influencers who talk about politics. That's it. 5 out of the 200. I mean, it's so very, very small, minute. And we see that we call them the uneducated voter. They go there and they vote for the presidential election, maybe the Senate, maybe the congressional, but they don't know who the hell to vote for. Their local communities, they don't know who to vote for in the Supreme Court, which unfortunately we lost, which is just tears out my heart, because that was a very important, the 2 races that we needed to win. And we are going to feel the ramifications, repercussions for that for many years to come, unfortunately.
Can I give you one analogy on?
Yes, please.
This is what I use. So the last year that I was chair, we were running a slate of candidates in Heartland for school board. Very conservative slate versus a very obviously non-conservative slate of candidates. And one of our third of the fourth candidate who could win a seat literally tied for a spot. And a lot of people don't know in Michigan election law, if you tie, there is a process to break a tie. Basically, there's a piece of paper that goes in a hat, and somebody picks out of the hat who then flips a coin first. Or sorry, they flip a coin to determine who picks the paper out of the hat. And one piece of paper says elected, one piece of paper says not elected. And so whoever wins the coin flip gets to pick first. And our candidate did not win. He picked the not elected. We had a pretty good idea that if we did a recount, that he would win that seat based on just some stuff that we saw. And I mean, Heartland, Michigan, that's probably one of the most conservative areas of Livingston County, which is already extremely conservative itself. When you do a recount, you get the pleasure of actually seeing physical ballots, right? You get to go through, it was a manual recount our clerk did. So we got to see every single ballot in that entire school board district. And it was very eye-opening for a lot of my grassroots people who helped us staff the recount for challenge work and observing, because they walked out and they're like, I just don't, they couldn't wrap their mind around how and who people voted for. Not only on the top part of the ballot when they could see it, but like down in school board, they would vote for 2 conservative people and then literally the 2 most like socialist people. And I was like, you guys have to remember, you live, eat, and breathe this. You know who all of these candidates are. A majority of people walking in the box, if they make it down that far, are literally voting on name ID, or maybe the guy named Scott was a total a-hole in high school and they'll never vote for a Scott, but Margie was nice and so they voted for her. Like, their thought process is so different when they walk in the box to vote. And I can tell you that some of the people that we had work that recount, it has fundamentally changed how they look at the everyday voter, because they've now realized how, I don't want to say schizophrenic and chaotic, but really chaotic people are when they vote. There's like no method to the madness when people are walking in that voting box.
That is, I mean, give me the chills, everything you just said, because that's where the resonation is, because it's so frustrating, because they're good quality candidates aren't getting in for everything that you just said and talked about, because people are uneducated. And that's why what you hit on your thread too was building the right infrastructure, which is so important for ground game. I mean, it's having those personal contacts. I mean, how many people read the flyers? How many people read the emails? But when you're having a conversation with someone, you're going to have a bigger impact. And that's why, you hear a lot of noise on social media. People always have an opinion. People are always angry. They're always yelling. And the loudest people, unfortunately, are the ones that never donate $5 to a campaign. They never door knock. They never make one phone call. They don't share any of their candidate stuff. They just kick and scream and point fingers, and they're loud, which unfortunately is a small piece of the puzzle, but they're there. And you think that they're the majority, but they're not. So we got to build that infrastructure, which you can agree with. But how do you unite Michigan? How do you unite? Let's say, Meghan, you're running for chair right now. And let's say, oh, I don't know, I didn't say that you are running for chair. Let's say you are, let's say 10, right? So you're out there. I don't know if you are or not. But
Gonna
let's
have to go breathe for a minute.
yeah, there you go. Didn't mean to put you out there. Because everything you're saying, like hearing you talk right now, I think you should run for chair because you have all the organizational skills, but you're like me, I'm not going back into politics, right? But you're the chair, let's say. What's your first step in uniting Michigan? What's your first step in dealing with the very passionate people on the right?
I think this is something that even as a party chair, I could have done a lot better. It's a lesson that I've learned that I think a lot more people who want to be leaders should learn. And that's really networking and communication. I think 9 times out of 10, people just want to be heard, and they get to that frustration level. And I think it's become so divisive that it has been so easy to silo people off, silo factions off, silo groups off. And I think our leaders have to do a better job of sitting down with people, listening to them, because at the end of the day, if you listen, you can really kind of figure out what they're concerned about, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a concern of some kind. But then I really think it's on people that know what's happening to really start to work to educate. And if I think we talked about earlier, you've been following some of my tweets lately. Um, I've I've been very blessed to be around politics for a long time and know the system. And I think that I have a responsibility, along with others who know things, to help educate those that are passionate about what's going on, how the system works, why things are happening the way they happen. Because if they don't know, it's really easy to default to anger, frustration, pulling back, conspiracy theories, all the other things if there's a vacuum there. And so I think we really need leaders who are going to sit down, listen, make that conscious effort to find common ground. I mean, that's really what it is, right? Let's be real. We're chaotic and divided. So are the Democrats. Like, if you look over there, they're having their own little issues just as bad as we are. But we've got to come together to win Michigan. I really can't stress enough how important 2026 is for the future of our state. This is going to set the groundwork for the next 30 to 40 years in Michigan. That's how important this cycle is. And like it or not, the Democrats are going to run a candidate that we are going to have a really tough time beating. I mean, if anybody thinks Mike Duggan is going to be an easy candidate to beat for governor, he is hands down the best candidate they could ever come up with. Now,
Yeah, even like Jocelyn Benson too. I mean, they do have some heavy hitters with over there, and they're going to have the money to push out a narrative, and that's why it's going to be all hands on deck. And people don't understand, like, there's so many times people are like, well, I can't make a difference. And yes, you can. Like I went on the road and talked about this in 2016. President Trump only won by 10,704 votes. So that means if you're in each of our 83 counties and you sway 7 people to vote, you win. We would have enough. So you can make a difference. And people understand, if you have 100,000 people that donate $10, it's a cup of coffee now. That's how, unfortunately, what inflation has done to us.
Right.
If you donate a cup of coffee to your candidate or to the party or something else, I mean, that adds up. That's what we proved when we ran for governor, what small dollar donors can do when you have a lot of small dollar donors. So the biggest thing that I ran to on the road was early voting last time. The new rhino is called deep state. You're not really a rhino anymore. I keep hearing that you're deep state. And, I went on the road and I was like, hey, President Trump wants to early vote. We have to early vote. And it worked. And so that is what we have to do is win. We can't change the election laws. We all want same day counting. We all want, in-person voting, but we don't change anything unless we win. And kicking and screaming and just say the election is stolen and my vote's not going to count and I'm just going to stay home doesn't work.
You're spot on. I mean, I went on the road right after the 22 election when that new ballot proposal was adopted that would bring early voting to Michigan, and started to travel to county parties and teach them. I called it the win plan, win in November, so WIN. And it was really about teaching them early voting's not evil. And even if you think it is, that's fine. It's a constitutional requirement now. It's not going away. So
Correct.
just like redistricting, we have two choices. We can either kick sand, take our bag, go home, and I can tell you what's going to happen. Like, we're going to get screwed. We're going to lose. It's that preconceived outcome that we're predicting for ourselves that we know it's going to happen. So we don't do anything. And then it happens. And we're like, see, we said it was going to happen. Or we can pull up our bootstraps and say, you know what? These are the rules. We may not like them, but until we change the rules of the game, we're going to play with them the same way the other team does. It's the analogy I use is like, imagine a football game where you have one team that says, the coach says you're never allowed to run into the end zone. You can only score points with a field goal. Okay, that team is not going to win a lot of football games because they're being handicapped. That's what Republicans do. They're basically saying, well, we don't like these election laws, so we want to just put them aside. We want to ignore that they exist. Okay, well, all of your opponents aren't doing that. And then you're shocked when you lose races. Early voting is here to stay. We have 45 days of voting now. Same day voting, we should absolutely have it, but we don't. And I don't ever see us going back to it. So if we allow our opponents to collect votes for 45 days and we're going to collect on one day, I can tell you 9.9 times out of 10 who's going to be winning elections. I really don't think we're in a persuasive model of campaigning anymore right now. You're not really persuading people to vote for you. It's a collection model, right? It's he who can get as many of your voters to vote wins elections. Trump literally just proved that. Democrats did not vote. Low propensity individuals and swing voters did. If you look back into the 22 cycle, there was well over 150,000 Michiganders that voted in 20 that did not vote in 22. And had they come out to vote, Tudor Dixon would be governor today. And that was on us to get them to vote. We didn't give them the reason, and we didn't give them the easy path to go vote. And those low propensity voting Republicans, they're going to do the same thing in 26. Yep. These are people that come out and vote every 4 years on a presidential campaign. If we want them to vote for governor in 26, you have to be on their doorstep. You have to be helping them with you have to early vote, AV vote, whatever it takes. You have 45 days to handhold them from home to the ballot box. And we have to do that if we want to win in 26.
Amen. Have you heard of anyone announcing that they're running for chair yet? I mean, I hear rumors and there's a graphic. I just haven't heard confirmed, this is who's running. Do we know yet?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of phone calls from people who have either told me they're considering it and asked my thoughts, or, people that have called me and said, oh, I've heard so-and-so's running. But I think I saw the graphic that you're referencing yesterday. I've not had anybody that I've seen officially announce that they're running yet.
Okay. And what are you looking for as a future gubernatorial candidate? Like, who's your perfect candidate that is going to represent not only Republican Party, but the middle, which we need to bring the middle over to win in the general for the gubernatorial race?
I mean, ideally it's somebody, you have two different kind of paths you can take, right? Either somebody with established name ID that can continue to grow a brand, that already knows how to build coalitions and can build on that. So some kind of somebody that's been elected and with a proven record. Or you've got to have an effective business person who is not only capable of raising money, but willing to put their own skin in the game and put money on the table to grow that name ID to win. I mean, the Democrats are going to have a pretty contentious primary over there, and they do have a deep bench. I think Duggan probably is the one that comes out of the primary, and he's going to be tough for us to beat. And so I
heard there's some lawsuit coming down with him, though. That's the rumor. I haven't confirmed. You always hear that anyways.
Yeah. I mean, stranger things have happened. If you start to look at everybody's got issues. I mean, everybody's got skeletons in their closet. Every candidate's flawed. There was only one perfect person that walked among us.
Amen. And he's gone. And we're not it.
He's gone now. So we've all got problems. So I don't know. I still think he's probably the toughest for us to beat. And so we've got to have somebody who can really work to build that team early. I mean, Michigan's timeline is just so messed up. We really need to look at adjusting our primary and moving that back to June, because once you have the primary in August,
You have
it's
no time.
it's 6 to 7 weeks before ballots are now going out in the mail and people are actively voting. That
Yeah.
is not enough time in a
No.
contested race to be running a general election. So you basically have to hedge your bet. You know this from running. You
Yep.
almost have to start building the infrastructure and running a general election campaign while you're still in a primary.
Amen. Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm hoping that 10 people don't run in the gubernatorial campaign or the race, and we have our winner that we kind of know who's going to do it, and we can start building that for that reason. I mean, we got
Right.
to have the money. We got to have the business sense. I agree everything that you said. If you don't have the name recognition of the brand, you're going to have to spend the money for that name recognition and a brand. And I'm looking for a business person, somebody who has executive experience, because we all know and believe what Michigan can become. I believe that we still can be the powerhouse of the nation. But we
Yeah.
just need the person with the right business experience, CEO experience, vision to do just that. I want to bring up your company because when I was reading your thread, I saw that you have a company called victoryfieldoperations.com. Explain what that is.
So back in 2020, when all of the candidates were running for governor and we had a cluster mess of that was 2020, right? I feel like my election cycles are now
2020, 2022.
all blurring together.
Yeah.
There were so many people that got kicked off the ballot with fraud,
Yeah.
and that was really frustrating. So Lee Albright, who owned National Petition Management, great friend of ours from Livingston County, probably one of the best in the entire country that did petitions, really kind of decided to retire. That was a lot after that cycle of petition work. And, I looked around and I looked at my partner, Jeff, and I said, if our candidates were struggling to get on the ballot with Lee here, with Lee as an option to go get signatures, and unlock Michigan, you've done signatures. What are they going to do now? If your candidates can't even make the ballot, people can't vote for them. Like, it's
Yeah.
fundamentals. I mean, I hear so many candidates that start to run and they start to raise money, but they need signatures to qualify and they don't think about that. And I mean, we can list off a couple of candidates that haven't made the ballot because they neglect their signature work. Nothing else matters if you're not doing that and doing it right. So,
Yeah.
founded VFO, and we have what I would call is we're setting the industry standard. We have an extensive fraud and auditing team. That's literally what we're known for. We were one of the only companies here in Michigan this cycle that didn't have any signatures flagged by the Bureau of Elections for fraud or forgery. But the steps and the process that we have instituted, um, it's not, I mean, we're also not the cheapest company, but that's because we have this fraud and auditing division, and we're also one of the only companies that refers any person who commits fraud, we refer you to law enforcement. No questions asked. Dead stop. Do not come work for us if you plan to scam. These candidates spend a lot of time raising money, and it takes a lot of work. When they entrust their hard-earned dollars to us to collect signatures, we want them to know at the end of the day that it's being used to collect good signatures and not going into somebody's pocket as a fake scam. And so we just don't even tolerate it.
That's huge. And someone who has done that in the amount of work and stress, it's stress because it's weighing over your head, not only that you're collecting signatures, but are they correct? I mean, when we were doing the Unlock Michigan petition, we had thousands of petitions that these people worked really hard going around getting the signatures and they were done wrong and we'd have to destroy it. Right. So, and especially seeing what happened in the last gubernatorial race with, several candidates getting booted off because of signatures, it would have been a different race. It really would have been. And I think it's fantastic. So, if you're thinking of running for any level and you need a certain amount of signatures, victoryfieldoperations.com.
Yeah, thank you.
You said it's very expensive. I don't know. Like, so let's say I'm running for governor and I'm saying, Meghan, I'm not. Meghan, hey, I want to hire you. What would that cost for me to get my 30,000 signatures with you?
It really depends. There's a range, and it depends on when you're collecting. We do have people that are talking to us about this cycle already. If you come to us in early 25, it's going to be cheaper than if you come to us in the spring of 26.
Okay, makes sense.
But you're looking probably out the door anywhere from, and I'm going to give you a large range. So you're looking anywhere from like $12 to $20 a signature out the door, and that's for everything, from front to back. There's a lot of legal that's included. And I would say part of the one thing that we care about is truly that fraud and auditing, and that's
Yeah.
why we cost a little bit more, because we take extra steps to double check the signatures. We do in-field audits where we literally go stalk our circulators and watch them when they don't know and see how they interact with people, see what their collection rate is. Is it reflecting what they're turning in? If it's not, that raises flags for us to do some more investigating. So we invest a lot of time in working with our circulators to make sure that, again, at the end of the day, when we hand you your boxes, we and you feel comfortable walking them into the bureau and putting them on the table for you.
And there's nothing like getting that done and understanding that you did it right. Okay. I mean, it's a few bricks out of your big brick backpack of responsibility. That's for sure. I want to get to one more thing before we end the show, because we've been almost talking for an hour. And thank you so much for your expertise, for your knowledge, your experience. I mean, this has been very eye-opening for me, and I know for a lot of other people who are watching, because they need to hear this. They need to hear this, because if they don't hear it from you, somebody who's been in the trenches, who's been in this battle, they're going to go on their Telegram channels and they're going to hear people that have opinions, and they're going to think that's factual, and it's not. Everything you said today is just spot on. We have a problem, obviously, with illegal immigration right now, and it's affecting not only on our southern border, but also up here in Michigan. We have Venezuelan gangs and other gangs that have infiltrated our communities. I want to show this picture that Matt Maddock just posted about vicious Venezuelan gang. Tren de Aragua is now claiming territory in City Troy, Michigan, Rochester Hills. And this is the first gang activity ever in peaceful communities. So if I was governor, I would be coming out and saying, hey, it's over. Like, don't even think about setting up shop here in the state of Michigan. We are going to do everything we can to get you, to deport you, to get you out of here. But unfortunately, our nanny governor, which you and I can pretty much agree that we think is hot garbage, she comes out and she's still saying these types of things. So let me share
We
this.
commemorate Transgender Day of Remembrance, when we honor the memory of those who have lost their lives to anti-trans violence. I want the community to know that I see you and I will always have your back. Here in Michigan, we believe in the freedom and dignity of each person to live their lives without fear. We also believe that bullies and bigotry have no place in our state. We stand up for each other and protect our most vulnerable communities. I'm proud that we've taken action to protect the LGBTQ+ civil rights here in Michigan, ensuring that you can't be fired from your job or evicted from your home because of who you are or who you love. We understand that our success as a state is determined by how we treat one another, and that's why we will continue to treat each other with mutual respect. Let's keep building a brighter future for Michigan, where everyone has the freedom to be themselves.
Oh, our nanny governor. Well, what are your thoughts on that, Megan?
I mean, you could take it a step further, right? Fox 2 Detroit yesterday morning had an article about how a well-known Detroit pastor was killed in a auto accident where an undocumented illegal immigrant was driving a car and ran him over. It's one thing after another. And it's very clear to me that Gretchen Whitmer and a majority of the Democrats in Michigan obviously did not listen to the voters on the first Tuesday in November, because I'm pretty sure that Michiganders specifically, I think America, but I think Michiganders made it very clear. They're tired of putting people's out of touch, irrational feelings over the fact of what they're experiencing as a family. The economy is out of control. People cannot pay their bills. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about actually educating their kids to read, not educating them that there's more than two genders. And I think they have not only not listened, but I think they're going to double down. I mean, every indication from what I'm seeing is they're going to double down on the insanity. And I think
it's like, what reality do they live in? Because you're spot on. Everything you just said was like a perfect tweet, by the way. they just double down. Like they're like, if we continue to force it, and that's what they do. We've learned with the Democratic Party what they're willing to do. They force. They don't use power. Power is educating. Power is listening. They force. They did it
Correct.
through the pandemic. They continue to do it through the policies. We don't care about the girls who don't want to share spaces with boys and compete against boys in sports. No, we're going to make this utopian little society that the very, very small minority rules over all of us.
Yep. And I think that on Tuesday, I think a very clear message was sent. People are tired of this very small minority percentage telling everyone else what to do. I think they're tired of the racist narrative, being called a racist for not
Homophobic, transphobic,
all the things, all the names. And these are everyday. Again, if you're watching this podcast, you're more in touch, you're more aware, you're more involved than a majority of people who are living their everyday lives. And so when they're going about their everyday lives and they're taking Johnny to baseball and they're taking Sally to Girl Scouts, and then you're starting to tell them that they're homophobic, they're racist, they're trans. Oh, by the way, if you don't want your daughter to be beat up by a boy, then in a girl's sport, or it be in the bathroom with them, then you're not welcoming and loving. I mean, it's mind blowing. And I think people are fed up with it. I think Democrats have missed the mark. I think they've absolutely misread the room. And I have not seen any indication since Tuesday that they have figured out what went wrong. And I think they're just continuing to double down. I mean, the House Democrats, they have made it there's a group of them that have made it very clear their number one priority this fall is to provide driver's licenses for undocumented illegals. I just, how out of touch can you be that that's your number one priority right now when we have, gangs in Oakland County? This is not the first international gang that's taken over Oakland County. Happened earlier this year as well. The car theft ring that went through that killed the deputy there. You've got multiple Michiganders who are now dead due to the actions of undocumented illegal immigrants. And let's just be real. They use the term undocumented because they want to clean it up and make it nice. Really, they're illegal immigrants.
Absolutely.
So they've given no indication that they understand where everyday people are.
And that's why it's so important, again, to go back to the fundraising on things, is you got to get that messaging out, because what the Democrats do, the ones who are very vocal and passionate about, they're going to go out there and they're going to kick and scream. But people like Alyssa Slotkin, they just stay quiet. I trolled her for months saying, hey, what's your views on this? The people need to know. Nothing. She doesn't even come up because they know it's a very vulnerable issue for them. Correct. And they fall in line. So they just stay quiet. Thank God Elon Musk bought X, or we would have been screwed in the last election, right?
I agree. 100%.
I mean, free speech is over there. And if you want to follow Meghans, Meghan Reckling at Meghan Reckling, right? That's your Twitter handle. She's putting out some very great information, but that's where freedom of speech is right now. And what's funny is I'm seeing Jocelyn Benson, Dana Nessel, they're jumping ship and they're going over to some other platforms now. I know there's Threads. I'm over on Threads. What's the other one I see?
Oh, there's another one.
Blue Wave,
Blue something. I forget what it is. I mean, we've got to not work to do that too, right? Like we have ours on our side where we don't like to, we've siphoned ourselves off into our own little bubble.
Echo chamber. Yep.
Echo chamber. And again, if we lived in Indiana, we could be more in an echo chamber. Very Republican state. Republicans are traditionally going to win. That's not Michigan. Republicans have to listen to the people in the middle. And Democrats are really good at it. If you look at counties like Livingston, for the first time ever, the Supreme Court candidates not only beat the Democrat Supreme Court candidates not only beat them, they won a majority of the vote. They won 52% of the vote in Livingston County. And that's simply because voters didn't know who they are. Democrats do really well, and you're going to start to see a push here. This is my last little pitch I'll give in because I know we're running on time. You're starting to see movements where people are saying things like, let's make our sheriff nonpartisan. Let's make this position nonpartisan. Democrats love that. Why? Because Michigan is pretty Republican. I mean, the cities are pretty Democrat. The out counties are Republican. That's redistricting, right? That's where we get into them wanting to drag the cities out into the rural areas to win more seats. They want those nonpartisan offices because if you look at the nonpartisan offices, that's where they do really well, where they can run candidates that hide behind that nonpartisan label and nobody knows who they are. Just here, we had a school board member in Livingston County who is a flat socialist. I mean, she is so far out there. She just won re-election in her school board race. And I was mind blown. I mean, she is so far off the reservation for what the families of this district believe in, that I was mind blown. But again, there was not a lot of money spent on the school board races, and not just here, but a lot of places. But those are areas that we have to do better. And that's really, to me, where the party structure comes in, is helping on the county and district levels, those down ballot, nonpartisan races, your Republican affiliated candidates get across the finish line. Especially in the judicial area. I don't think very many people understand. I had a lot of people say, well, I didn't get a mailer from the Supreme Court candidate telling me he's a Republican. And I said, well, the canon of ethics prohibit them from doing that. They cannot tell you they're a Republican. The only way you know is if the Republican Party tells you these are our judges.
Candidates.
And you'll see some threads coming up on why I think we should not have neglected the nonpartisan judicial races, especially when it comes to voting and election integrity, because I think some people are going to be blown away with what we could be facing in Michigan on that front.
You have to get over on X. You have to follow Meghan Reckling. Okay. If you're interested in running, trust me, it's a lot easier to pay someone else to do your signatures. It's one less thing because fundraising is so important that you need to put your energy on there. So if you want to run and if you're interested, go to victoryfieldoperations.com, get a hold of them. I could vouch for how stressful it is. That is for sure. And obviously you can follow us too at Grassroots Army over there on X. That's where freedom of speech is, folks. Megan, my goodness gracious. Awesome show. Thank you so much for coming on. And it just went even better than I expected. You hit on so many important issues. So thank you. And I'd like to have you on here in the near future again, as we have the announcement of who's running. And so we can win back our state, because you're 100% right. In 2026, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for everything that you're doing. I know when I tweeted out the candidate list, you took yourself off super fast.
Yes. Do not have any desire. And Sam Fawaz, God bless him, man. He put it out there on Facebook. And I mean, I have a lot of support, and I appreciate and love all of the folks who follow me and support me. But again, I eat some humble pie, man. Like back before, like when I ran for governor, I believe that we need somebody who's going to stand up, right? Constitutionally. Like we went through so much garbage. That's why Ryan Kelly was out there. Me and Ryan had almost the identical platform on policy and everything else that we stood for. But now I think we've evolved. We're no longer, fighting for our freedom per se, for lockdowns and everything else. We need an executive and need somebody with business experience. I own a business. I operate very successful businesses, but I'm not to that level yet. Maybe someday if I get that experience and I can bring to the table, but I know enough that when I don't have the proper skill set, I'm gonna be humble enough to step aside and let the people who do, and I'll get behind them and support them. And that's what kind of like my role is, just like what you're doing right now. You develop this business, right, to help good candidates.
And you're a great example of, again, when people say, I can't contribute, everybody can contribute something. Maybe knocking on doors isn't your thing. I was driving in my car making phone calls on election day for Tom Barrett, with the app, reminding people to get out and vote, hands-free, just in case anybody in law enforcement's listening. But everybody has a niche, and you've really evolved, and you are very impactful, and you have a place. And I think that's great. Thank you for everything that you're doing to educate and inform and motivate and inspire people. I think that's really important. But everybody has a role to play, because it is a really big, it's like baking a cake. Every ingredient matters, and the eggs aren't more important than the flour. It all is a part of the final recipe that we need to win elections.
Amen. And how cool is it? I just read on X, I think yesterday, Tom Barrett got to his great-grandfather's office.
So excited. I think I was going to cry if Curtis Sertel ended up being my congressman.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for Tom, excited that he got that office specifically. He's going to do a great job.
He's such a great individual. For folks who don't know Tom Baird, I mean, he's just your Captain America kind of picture of what you
everyday
think.
person.
Yeah, man. He just
Absolutely.
love him to death. Also too, congratulations to your football team on how far they got into the playoffs.
Oh, one of my best friends is a coach for Howell, and unbelievable how well they did this season. I think my daughter cried as hard as the guys and the coaches did last Friday. But they did so well. We're really proud of them. So thanks. I'll pass that along to them.
You betcha. Hey, God bless you, Megan. Thanks again, girl.
You too. Have a good one. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye. Wow. What a great show. Do me a huge favor. People need to hear her message. Gosh, I wish she would consider running for some type of office in the future, but she is doing her role. That is for sure with victoryfieldoperations.com. Again, if you're interested in running and need signatures, get a hold of her. I mean, look at everything she said. She's knowledgeable. You get what you pay for. And if you're putting all this time, money, energy, and sacrifice into your campaign, you got to make sure you get on the ballot. Signatures are a piece of the pie. That is for sure. So I'll continue to do my part and give you up-to-date, accurate, and truthful information. Call it the hot garbage. But Meghan Reckling, make sure if you're not on X, you're missing out. Get over on X. It's fantastic right now. Elon's done a fantastic job. There's great information. That's where I get my news. Guess who the news is? We the people. And we the people are over on X. So if you're on X, get over there. Follow Meghan at Meghan Reckling. You can follow us at Grassroot Army, not Grassroots. That one was taken. It's Grassroot Army. Get over us, give us a follow, and let's build this coalition that we're trying to build right now, because it is going to be very important for us to win here in the state of Michigan, okay, here in 2026. So God bless you. God bless the state of Michigan, of course, and always God bless these United States. Have a phenomenal weekend.